So another thing that I find irrationally annoying, Rockio, is that soccer uniforms are called kits. Why? Why is that?
It's just a European thing. They call you know what they call their cleats, don't you?
No.
They call them boots.
Boots.
Yeah, you got boots. That's why it's the golden boot in the World Cup.
Oh.
It's not the golden
I guess I
shoe
should have known
or the
that.
golden cleat. It's the golden boot. So you have your kit, and then you have your boot. But here's the thing. This right here, this is just a jersey. See, the jersey is the top of the kit.
So you have to now. Do you have to have the shorts and the boots to complete the kit?
And the socks. You
That's
need
the
special
kit.
socks. That's the kit.
That's the
So
kit.
the kit's the full shooting match.
I see. I actually really like soccer. I love betting on soccer. One of my favorite things to do is like on a Saturday night, I'll do I call it goal alert parties. So, and by a party, I mean it's me and my wife and my dog, and we just get drunk at home. But on Apple TV, they've got goal alerts that pop up. Like basically, I have the package to watch all of the MLS games, but then there's also the whip around coverage where it's like, oh, we got a goal in Kansas City, and it says goal alert, and it pops up on the screen. This is a very fun thing to do. Take one goal to be scored in every soccer game. Like if there's like 14 of them, take one. The value's not great. A lot of times it'll be like plus 100. You might get to even money. Is about as good as you're going to get. Maybe a little bit higher. Take one goal. Not one goal from each team, but just one goal from each game. And then just sit around and wait for goal alert to pop up on the bottom of the screen. And then when goal alert pops up, you just yell, goal alert! And then do a shot. It's fun. A lot of the fun things I do revolve around alcohol consumption. That's how I have fun. Betting and boozing. These are the things I enjoy doing. But I like that. Hold up 1/8 of that kit over there for me. I like that.
No, it's a good looking kit. Actually, and the coolest thing about it is not just to do it for them. You see the kind of all the squiggly lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's 100% unique on every jersey.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like the confluence of the rivers, but it kind of looks like a fingerprint.
I think that's a little deep, but okay.
It is a little deep. It is, but you know how they have to do it. They have to explain every part of like why there's a red stripe. What does it mean?
Yeah.
And it's so every jersey is kind of unique, and I personally really like that aspect because I'm not a big jersey buyer and thing like that because it's all the same thing and it's just cookie cutter. But the fact that you buy one of these right now and it's going to be completely different than everybody else, that's actually just a good idea.
You're selling it well. I'm not going to buy it because soccer jerseys don't fit my fat ass very well.
I got this one and they asked what size you need. I got a 2XL. I need 2XL because there's some shirts where I'm not an XL. In soccer jerseys, I am never an XL.
You know what was a bad turn is when the NFL went from the old school Reebok baggy jerseys to these stupid form-fitting. Like, why do I need a form-fitting jersey? I'm not playing. I understand why if you're the running back for the Rams, you need to have a form-fitting tight jersey.
Or you're
I'm a fat
you
dude.
don't want
Correct.
people pulling on
That's
it.
what I'm saying. I'm a fat dude that gets wings and beer stains on my jersey, and I need a little room to grow over the course of a 9-hour football day. I miss the old school Reebok. I would even go farther back. Like, I think Wilson used to make some of these jerseys in the 90s, and they were great. But I used to have just a whole, I used to be a jersey kind of dork back when I was in high school. So I had like a Dante Hall jersey. He's one of my favorite players ever. The human joystick, the X Factor. Don't kick the ball to Dante Hall. Number 82, baby. Had the white Dante Hall jersey. I had multiple Priest Holmes jerseys. I loved Priest Holmes. Like guys like that. I might have even had an Eddie Kinnison jersey. I don't know. I know I had Tony Gonzalez. I had multiple Tony Gonzalez jerseys. But, man, that was back before Taylor Swift's boyfriend played football, so a lot of you Chiefs fans not know who any of these people are. But they played football in an era that we call BS, and that's before Swift. So go and look them up. They were pretty good at football. You might enjoy that era. But I was a big jersey guy for a little bit of my life, and I'm also a huge proponent of the Cardinals 80s powder blue jerseys. That is one of my favorite jerseys of all time. And I've got the Ozzie jersey in that. I have a Vince Coleman jersey in that. I've got all of them. I mean, I love that. I love the old batting practice jerseys, those kind of thick mesh ones with the big embroidered STL on the breast, and you got Willie McGee on the back and O. Smith on the back. I love those jerseys. But it's funny, Brooke brought this up on the way out. I was walking in, she was walking out, and she said, "What are you talking about today?" I said, "Honest to God, I don't even know. I don't know." It'll just come to me when I start doing it. It's one of those things. She goes, I have an idea for you. I said, what's that? She says, you should talk about Fanatics. I said, well, yeah, Fanatics sucks. Fanatics is terrible. I mean, not just from the standpoint of the players who are bitching about the ugly jerseys, but I am someone who has shopped at Fanatics for a long time, and Fanatics used to be a very high-quality website. It used to be a place where you could go and you could expect to get good quality gear. Let me tell you what you get now. Like, couple washes, you know what starts happening on a lot of championship T-shirts, a lot of unique T-shirts? That stuff starts wearing off real quick. Why? Because they've gone cheap and the quality control is crap at Fanatics. It's terrible, man. And look, this may not apply to a lot of you, but wrestling T-shirts. Are you a wrestling guy at all, Rockio?
Not anymore, no.
Okay, me neither, really. But my wife is some weirdo. She and my mom are really
about this yesterday.
like really into wrestling. Strange. They really love it. My grandma, when I was growing up, used to drive to St. Louis from Poplar Bluff to go watch wrestling.
I don't know a lot about wrestling, but I do know the fact that, like, show merchandise, just like a concert, is a huge part of the fandom around WWE.
Correct. So, like my wife will want me to go to shows with her, so I'll find shirts that I like of wrestlers, more so wrestlers that I liked back when I was a kid, or ample-bosomed lady wrestlers that wrestle now. You know, like, hey, here's my Carmelo shirt. You know, like that type of deal, right? Or here's my Alexa Bliss, she's got a nice ass T-shirt. And I'll wear these to the wrestling matches that my wife wants to go to. And WWE used to have great, outstanding quality merchandise. The logos looked great on the shirts, and the print was great, and it never wore off. And the shirts had a good thick quality, not too thick where they were uncomfortable and boxy, but good quality. You felt like you were wearing a shirt. Then they got in bed with Fanatics, and they decided to let Fanatics handle all of it. So if you want your, Rowdy Roddy Piper T-shirts, or your Hulk Hogan T-shirts, or your Braun Strowman, may he rest in peace, T-shirts, big ups, any of these people, you would now have to go to Fanatics. And the quality of these shirts sucks. Sucks. And it didn't used to be that way. Fanatics was awesome. And now Fanatics sucks. And now it takes forever to get your merch from Fanatics. And their Fanatics branded stuff sucks. The quality blows. And now they have kind of a monopoly over it. That's the other problem you run into, is Fanatics has a monopoly over all of the good merch. And it bothers me. Remember when Majestic used to make good stuff? You were a kid during McGuire, right? Like, do you remember McGuire?
Oh, God, yeah.
So, like, because I would have been 13, 14 years old, like in the prime of McGuire. When the trade happened, I was 11. That next season, I was 12. Most fun I've ever had being a sports fan of any team ever was watching McGuire v. Sosa. It was the greatest, okay? I had the McGuire batting practice, the red batting practice jersey, embroidered, had the Cardinals on the front, McGuire on the back. That bad boy, if I still had that sumbitch, that thing would still be intact. I got a buddy of mine who still has that same jersey, and it's still in wonderful shape. And you know what was great about that? It wasn't some ironed-on crap like we see now. Like, you go over to Fanatics, and you're like, oh, wow, there's an Ozzie Smith blue jersey for $99. I guess I'll buy it. Then you get home, and you know what it is? It's a crappy patch that's sewn onto the front of it. It's junk. It's garbage. And you wash it a couple times, and you know what happens to it? It starts fading and wearing off. I don't like it. These are the things that bother me. But there are good things that are happening in the world, not just Fanatics-related content here. Good news is, yesterday, a trailer dropped for the new EA Sports college football video game. Are you excited?
I don't know. I can't. Ryder, I get in trouble right now if I tell you I'm going to take off days just to play a video game. I won't get in trouble for that. Cool. I have PTO days. I can do that. I'm going to consider taking off a day or two, because the amount of time that I used to spend playing that game was unconscionable, and the way that I'm going to make Utah State just like an absolute
was the most
slobber knocker of a team.
So hopefully the option is there for you to like be the coach of a team.
Oh, yes.
Like, for whatever reason,
Dynasty
I want it to be as realistic as possible, right? Like, in terms of like the behind the scenes stuff. Like with my pornography, I need a story. Like, I can't just watch two people going at it. I need to know their lives. I need to know what they do for a living. I want to know how they met. I need a full story. that's kind of how I like my sports video games. I want the whole damn shebang.
You want to be playing, and you want to like a pop-up to come up and be like, Ohio State just backdoor offered your wide receiver $3 million in NIL. What are you going to do to get him the money? You want those kind of props popping up.
If it's at LSU, I want one of the backup running backs to maybe kill somebody.
No, we don't want that.
I'm not. Look, I want it realistic. That's all I'm asking for here. I want to be like you move on from like high school as a coach, and they're like, hey, you've been offered a job at South Alabama in Mobile, and I'm like, I guess I got to take it. It's the only offer I have. And then like we go in there and we go 10-2, and they're like, hey, listen, Mississippi State's calling, and I'm like, I'm going to turn it down. I still got unfinished business here coaching the Jaguars. Like that's why I want it to be realistic like that. Like I'm a nerd in that way. And let me tell you, the greatest ever feature on any video game ever was in college football, EA Sports College Football, Home Field Advantage. There was nothing better because it made you feel like, oh, God, there is a true disadvantage in me. If I'm LSU and I'm going to Florida, the controller's going to start vibrating and the screen's going to make me feel like I'm having a seizure. It was the greatest feature on any game ever.
I'll tell you this right now. As much as back in the early 2000s, I think ESPN ran like 15 different specials on how hard Death Valley was to play in and how it's the greatest.
Yeah.
It's
Talk about LSU.
Yeah, at LSU, it's the greatest stadium ever. That didn't get accurately conveyed to me until I walked into a Target and I went to go play an NCAA football demo. And the demo was you're an away team in Death Valley against LSU and you have to win the game in the fourth. And I have never been so nervous in my entire life.
It's so
it
fun.
Made it feel like you were there 100%.
It's like this. Madden is truly the worst game because every year, Madden literally, they take you behind the like a building and they bend you over and they just take your money. It's literally the same game every year. Nothing changes. There's no cool new features. And if they do add a new feature, it's one where you're like, listen, I don't want to have to go through my whole life story and play little tiny intervals of my high school career to get recruited by a school. If we're going to do this, let's play a whole high school season, baby. Let's do something. But like Madden is such a boring, terrible, slow game, and it never gets any better. But every year, here I am at GameStop, and they're like, sir, you getting the new Madden? I said, yes. Then they'll say, do you want to buy insurance on it? I'm like, yes. And then before you know it, I've spent $75 on a game that I have for the last 10 years. It's the same game.
I gotta read one text because this is fascinating to me. I think I figured out how MLB can save this whole, Fanatics fiasco, which is the 636 says, you are an idiot. Fanatics is fine. F you. And so I really think that if we just get MLB to put you out in front and say, I hate these jerseys, the amount of people who will then be like, actually, I think they're completely fine. Just to be a contrarian, I think we could actually save MLB here.
That person's a dick. Okay? I don't care what they say. I know what I'm speaking about.
Also, the
Fanatics
only person
sucks.
in America who's saying that Fanatics is doing good right now.
Like
you're the only person. Are you on the board?
Sucks. Yes.
Are you
That's Stanley Fanatics. That's who that is. My name is Jonathan Fanatics III. I come from a long line of people in the Fanatics family. Like, come on. Nobody thinks Fanatics is doing a good job. Fanatics blows. But you're right. I guess I could say blue, they'd say red in some cases. Not most of them. Most of them love what I'm doing and dig it and they enjoy it. And they're like, this is different and refreshing. Then there's a couple of people who are just typical St. Louis schmucks that are set in their ways and whatever. I love St. Louis, so I did not mean to be critical. I love you guys. Look. There's a bunch I still have to get into. This is the last day I'm doing this. This is the last day you'll ever hear me on 101 ESPN. This is the end of the road for me, so I got to get it all out while I'm here. So you guys can text in. You guys can do whatever. I'll tell you one thing I heard today that upset me is I don't like Rock and Randall Carricker's dismissal of the Battlehawks either. Did you hear? Like what? Did you hear the dismissal in his voice? Like, oh, the Battlehawks. Like, come on, bro. We've had 2 football teams go away. Show a little support for them, just a little bit. Like, I'm not telling you to go to the game and dress as a bird or something, but like, don't scoff at the idea that we have a professional football team here. We've already lost 2 of the sons of bitches. We might as well at least say, hey, it's cool that somebody wants to be here. And oh, by the way, 40,000 people go to the games. What?
That's the last person who needs. I mean, he made one comment about how he can't wait to win the UFL Cup.
I heard. It bothered me. It hurt me.
We had multiple players, almost the entire coaching staff on at one point last year on the show.
There was a dismissal. There was a sarcasm in his voice.
Yeah, well,
I didn't like it.
It's a Friday.
I didn't like it. No. That be on Fridays
You're not
we
gonna
can be
make
dismissive.
You're not going to make jokes about the UFL, really.
I'm not.
Really?
I
Come
know
on.
I'm not. I'm not. I will make no jokes about the UFL. And if I did, none of you would hear them. I'm over on Casey in the afternoon. All right, we're back after this. It has also been brought to my attention that Braun Strowman, not dead. Thanks to my wife for pointing that out. I knew if she was listening, she'd know. I think Bray Wyatt is the guy that died, not Braun Strowman. And if you want my hot wrestling take, I don't think they featured Braun Strowman enough. And in wrestling smart mark parlance, I don't think Braun Strowman ever got an adequate push. Thank you. I'm Josh, by the way, in for the balloon party. If you'd like to follow me on social medias, just Josh Ennis Show. You spell it INNES. You can do that on all the socials. This is the last day I'm going to be on 101 ESPN. I talked to Tommy, who I guess technically runs this place. I don't even know who really does. I think Mike might, but Tommy claims to run this place. He said, this is your last day. He said, you're donezo. This is the end of the road for you, dog. He said, you had your 7 days, and now you got to leave. So I'll miss you guys. So this is the last time I'll be on here, but I've enjoyed it thoroughly. You know, back to the video game thing for a second. Do we agree that the best non-EA sports game ever, there's usually a debate between two games. It's MLB 2K4, the game with Albert on the cover, right? That's usually up for the debate. And NFL 2K5, the game with T.O. on the cover. Those are generally speaking, like, dude, those 2K versions of sports games, better than anything EA Sports puts out. But EA Sports has the brand. They got the Madden. Dude, the 2K NBA games have always been better.
It erased EA for a while. EA stopped doing NBA Live after, I want to say, 09, and they didn't bring NBA Live back until 18 or 19 because NBA Live was so bad in 09. It was so much the inferior product to 2K 09 that I think that was the split where they dropped off the NBA Live title and just said, we quit. But yeah, the EA is just, they're resting on their laurels. Every sports game gets bad as soon as you don't have competition. 2K was great in 09, but 2K then got progressively worse, almost Madden-like every year because it didn't have to be better than NBA Live. When NBA Live came back in 18, 2K was not as good of it for a year, and then they got their stuff right. NBA Live fell back off, and 2K's the king again. But it's not the king because it's good. It's the king because there's no competition. That's the problem.
What is the greatest video game of all time? Spanning all consoles, genres, whatever. What is to you the greatest video game? Tell me the game and the console.
This is the nerdiest thing about me.
Are you going to say Zelda?
No, it's not that. It's actually even more niche than Zelda.
Okay.
For the PlayStation 1, it was a game called Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh God, yeah.
And the only reason why I love it is partially because there's a line in the game, in the story of this game, which was made for children. There's a line said by one character where he says, "If the only punishment for a crime is a fine, then that is only a crime against the poor." That's a line said in a game for children, and it's the truest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
The best video game ever is GoldenEye 007 for Nintendo 64.
That's a great one. And yeah, Kim Gurin on the YouTube chat, easy answer, GoldenEye.
It is easy. Now, if you want to do a Mount Rushmore, that's a more difficult task. But the easiest answer in history for the greatest video game ever is GoldenEye 007. And like there'd be like, you'd have like judo chops. Like if you were out of guns, you had to like judo chop somebody. And you're carrying around like AK-47s. And like the pause music for it was this like really kind of intoxicating, hypnotizing music. And it was amazing. But that, dude, I would argue that the greatest video game era ever is like 97 to like 99 Nintendo 64 world. That is the greatest era of video games because you had GoldenEye 007, you had Mario Kart Nintendo 64. Every human on the planet played Mario Kart Nintendo 64.
Did you ever Mario Mart when you were in college?
What is that?
It's a drinking game with Mario Kart.
No, college was a little bit later for me. Like when I was in college, people started playing the Wii a lot. Oh, okay. So we just get hammered and play Wii tennis.
That's a great idea.
That is dangerous.
Actually. That's fun.
Very dangerous. And my buddies were all high, and I was just hammered on Bud Light limes, playing this tennis, just intense.
TV's just dropping every week.
It was like John McEnroe in there.
Walking to Best Buy for the 4th time that month, like, yep. Broke another one.
God, you know what else was great? So if I had to think, this is a game that looking back wasn't great, but there was a game called Ken Griffey Baseball. Yep. And like there were no fans in the stands for some reason. It was empty. And it was a weird game, but I liked it. And of course, WCW versus NWO Revenge. That was a great game. Like, here's the thing, and I'll move off of video games in a second here, but I mean, this is a big day because a big announcement that we're getting NCAA football back, and now it's with players being able to make money on name, image, likeness. So, like, there's a lot of possibilities for this, and I think if this game sucks, it's going to be the worst. I don't know that I'll be more let down by anything in my life than if this game sucks, because we waited a decade for this. But, like, as far as video games go, like, I was a Sega guy. I didn't have a Super Nintendo. That really wasn't my jam. I had a Sega Genesis. So I had we had NBA Jam. We had NBA Jam Tournament Edition.
He's on fire.
Which is one of the ultimate GOAT games of all time. My wife, she hates NBA Jam Tournament Edition because she hates the little hot spots that you can stand on and like get like an 8-point shot. Like, I love that. But that game was elite. And I never thought that we'd get to a point like that we are now, obviously, with video games where they're so lifelike. But in the late 90s, when Nintendo 64 came about, and I believe I was playing, I guess it would have been like one of the WCW games, NWO games, and I was like, I don't know that video games can ever get better than this. You take out that cartridge, you just blow it. It didn't even know if it mattered, but you'd blow in it, you put it back in the Nintendo 64. Boom, we're playing GoldenEye. Boom, we're playing Blitz. Blitz is also a Mount Rushmore game. And if it's not an overall Mount Rushmore game, it's at least a Nintendo 64 Mount Rushmore game. No doubt on that.
You can put it on the Mount Rushmore all time because it is it's an arcade now. You can walk into a bar. You can walk into
Same
a bar.
with NBA Jam.
You can walk into a bar and it's an arcade, and I think that when you go across mediums, it gives you more.
So, dude, it's great. So then, I wasn't a big PlayStation guy. I did have the original PlayStation at the time, and I remember playing Twisted Metal, and I thought Twisted Metal was the greatest. And I had a game because it was like $5 for sale at Walmart. It was called the Die Hard Trilogy, and you could be John McClane in all 3 Die Hard movies. I liked Die Hard with a Vengeance. I thought that was the most fun of the games. But anyway, then we moved on to PlayStation 2. And in PlayStation 2, I'm playing Madden one day with a buddy of mine. And I'm thinking to myself, things will never get better than this. It will never get better than PlayStation 2.
That's
this is the greatest.
Impressive self-awareness.
I'm like,
I didn't have that.
Oh, totally. Dude, when it was 2001, I said, there will never be a greater video game console. How can they make this more realistic? They can't. And then PlayStation,
as the people have squared heads,
yes, their shoulders are boxing,
their hands are just triangles,
and I'm like, it'll never get better than this. This is the greatest. And then PlayStation 3 comes along, and it's a submarine. Like, this console is this gigantic, like, 45-pound console in your room, and you play it. I think, well, guys, listen, I know I said before that things will never get better than PlayStation 2. I don't think things are ever going to get better than PlayStation 3. And then they just kept getting better and better. Now I think we've hit a point that I don't know that you can make them any better. Like, have we hit, like, the limit of how great video games can be? I don't know.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that's a lot of things.
No, the limit was hit.
I always like to think back to, like, imagine somebody in, like, the 1930s, and he's got, like, the black lung, and he has to go work in a coal mine. You know, like, he's 11, and he's working in a coal mine. He's got a black lung.
Simplify this. Can you imagine being a child and having to push a hoop with a stick?
Imagine being Jack Buck when he was a kid. Jack Buck stood on, like, boxes, smoking cigarettes, selling newspapers when he was, like, 7 years old. Okay? Now imagine us. We're like, I don't know. This PlayStation 5 isn't as realistic as I think it should be. Like, my VR goggles, I think they could be adjusted a little bit.
You know what? I'm not.
By the way, those kids weren't pushing little hula hoops with a stick. They were literally in coal mines. Their dads were sending them out to earn a living so they can make pennies a week to afford bread during the Great Depression. And we're out here like, boy, this NCAA game better be good, or I'm going to be super pissed.
I usually fight against the whole every generation's worse than the one before it, but when you frame it that way,
I'm not even saying anybody's
kind of inarguable.
No, look, I feel bad for the little bastards that they had the black lung and stuff. I'm happy about where I am. All I'm saying is, like, imagine that transition. Imagine you're someone who grew up it was alive in like 1890, but also alive in like 1965 or 1970. So you'd be 80 years old if you were born in 1890 and lived in 1970. Think about how much the world changed. In 1890, there was no radio. I don't even know if there was electricity. If there was, it was rudimentary, right? And then you're a kid. You're like, what do I do? It's 1900. What do we do for fun? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You're 5 years old. You get a damn job. Then like 1970 comes along and there's television and some of them are in color. And you're like, what is this? I mean, radio had to have beat you over the head. Then TV. It's wild to think, man. Wild. That's existential stuff there, man. Now I'm going deep. Now, I want you to sit around and think about a 7-year-old Jack Buck with the black lungs smoking a cigarette selling newspapers in Ohio. And think about the life you have now and your kids have now, okay? And we'll be back and talk about other exciting stuff after this.
This is Rocky with your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night, the Blues get a win over the Edmonton Oilers, 6-3, thanks to a 5-goal second period. They'll be back in action tomorrow, facing off against the Predators. 4 p.m. puck drop means a 3 p.m. pregame show right here on your home for the St. Louis Blues, 101 ESPN and 101ESPN.com. And tonight, it's going to be the St. Louis Billikens hosting VCU in an A-10 battle. That's a 6 p.m. tip-off, I should say. And then the number 14 Fighting Illini face off against Maryland on Saturday afternoon, with the Missouri Tigers still looking for their first SEC win of the year, traveling to Ole Miss for a Saturday night SEC matchup. That is your Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
You working a little slew in there. Thinking about college basketball, I don't think I could name one college basketball player currently. I don't think I could. I don't know that I could. I mean, I know that's wow worthy. I mean, I just don't watch it. I mean, I couldn't name, great conductors either, but I don't really care.
If Purdue wasn't getting bounced out of the tournament every year for the last 3 years, you probably would have remembered Zach Edey.
Oh, I know. He's the giant dude.
Yes.
He's like 7'11".
Still playing in college basketball. And it's just that I think Purdue just keeps getting bumped by the second round despite being a number 1 or 2 seed the last 3 years of his career. Then no one actually knows who he is, despite the fact that he's been there forever and he's one of the leading scorers at all time.
I say that to bring this up because this is going to sound like it's some sort of anti-women's basketball stance, but really it's just an anti-sports I don't care about stance. So I was looking at the old twits today, old Twitter doodle, or X, formerly known as Twitter. And some guy, I think it might have been Tim Legler, said, Caitlin Clark is one of the 5 most exciting basketball players I've ever seen. I'm like, bro, you're a liar. Now, if you don't know Caitlin Clark, which a bunch of you probably don't, I wouldn't blame you. Caitlin Clark is the all-time leading women's college basketball scorer, right? That's happened last night. You might also know her as the poor, defenseless little white girl who lost in the championship last year to the big, bad team with the black girl on it, LSU.
Is that really like the widespread narrative?
Oh my God! Did you see Twitter? Now I only know this because I went to LSU, but last year LSU beat them in the championship, and Angel Reese, the Bayou Barbie, dime piece, my angel, she goes over and starts taunting Caitlin Clark, who by the way taunts people all the time.
Yeah, that was so blown out. I feel like only the dumbest people were bothered by that.
But it was a racial thing. Is all it was. You get the white people angry. I mean, they're in Iowa. There are no black people, so they're in Iowa. So it's all angry white people, and they're like, "Did you see what that thug did?" And then the black people go they'll dig up video of Caitlin Clark doing this to other people, and she does it too.
That's what you do in basketball. You trash talk. It is the sport, I believe, with most at its core active trash talk, unless you're counting what offensive and defensive linemen say to each other in the trenches.
Correct.
It's those two things are neck and neck.
So I bring this up, though, because now Caitlin Clark, I'm seeing people act like they care that Caitlin Clark is the all-time leading women's basketball scorer.
Well, she's going to pass Pete Maravich later this season for the all-time. Well,
scorer. I want Pete Maravich to play a game against Caitlin Clark, and I want to see who would win one-on-one.
Does one of them get a three-point line and the other one doesn't?
One of them is dead, and I'd still take the one that's dead. Here's a fun fact about Pistol Pete Maravich, by the way. Arguably the greatest white basketball player to ever live. Maybe outside of Larry Bird.
There you go.
I don't count any of the gigantic ogre white men of the 50s, George Mikan.
I thought you were going to make fun of my large Serbian son, Nikola Jokic.
Oh, no, Jokic is the GOAT.
Okay.
I love Jokic. As far as, white basketball players go, I'm a big Jokic guy. But, and I'm trying to think. Yeah, Jokic is and Luka. Luka's good too, But anyway, so Pistol Pete. Let me rewind. So Pistol Pete went to Louisiana State University from 1969 to 1972, I believe, the years he was there. The team was never good. They went to the NIT, but the NIT was a bigger deal back then, but they went to the NIT. And Pistol Pete was just this incredible being, right? Everybody knows who Pistol Pete is. But there was a study done by a gentleman, I think Dale Brown, who used to coach at LSU. Dale Brown became the head coach at LSU after Pete Maravich's dad, Press Maravich, got fired. And Dale Brown was the coach at LSU from 1972 to 1998. Took the team to multiple Final Fours, greatest basketball coach they've ever had, brought Shaq to LSU, Chris Jackson to LSU. Now you know him as Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, all these guys. they did a study once that said that if the three-point line existed, I forgot what the exact number was, but I think Pete Maravich, who I think went on to average 44.2 points per game in his career, I think that's right around the number.
Correct so far.
All right. He averaged 44.2 points a game. If Pete Maravich had a three-point line, he would have averaged well over 50 points per game because his shots were like Steph Curry shots.
Yes, and in fact, it's funny you bring that up because an interesting part of this story that I brought up at the end of the opening drive is that the NCAA didn't keep stats for the women's game until 1982. And so Lynette Woodard, who played at Kansas in the end of the 70s and early 80s without a three-point line, has more points than Caitlin Clark has right now. But because the NCAA's weird way of acknowledging it, she's never been the all-time leading scorer in women's basketball, even though she is the all-time leading scorer in women's basketball.
It's also
and without a three-point line.
A relatively new development that anybody even feigns caring about women's basketball. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, basically, there were 4 women's or colleges that focused on women's basketball up until about a decade ago, and now everybody's doing it more. But you had your Tennessees and your Connecticut's, Louisiana Tech.
I was going to say, you can't forget about Louisiana Tech in the 80s. Bob Ramsey was the one who called those games.
Oh, good. Okay. I know what La Tech is because Bob Ramsey was there. My God, we got to localize
I've heard a lot of LA Tech stories. That's all I'm saying.
So, and Baylor became one recently, and LSU is becoming one. But for the most part, no one cared, so they didn't focus on it. Now it's becoming a thing. It was easy for Pat Summitt to go dominate women's college basketball because literally no other colleges cared. So, like, one college is like, we care. Let's go motor through and win like 10 championships. Same with Gino, REM, and these guys. But people, like, I get annoyed by people who act as if they care about things they truly don't care about. And I don't believe the world cares that Caitlin Clark is the all-time scorer. Good for her. I'm not trying to besmirch women's basketball. It's adorable. When I played in high school, here's how it was set up. There would be a girls' JV, boys' JV, girls' varsity, boys' varsity. So we'd have to play 4 games in a day. And the girls' games would usually be 3-2 at halftime. Riveting. Don't get me wrong. However, like this idea that someone wants to try to feed me something to chase clout. It's all clout chasing. That's what the world is. It's clout chasing. To tell me that Caitlin Clark is one of the 5 most exciting basketball players, men or women, that was a caveat, that's a joke.
He's saying right now or all time?
All time.
Yeah, all time.
All time.
All time is going to be a little bit of a stretch. But I think what the reaction around Caitlin Clark is showing you is that women's basketball, both the WNBA and women's college basketball, is seeping into the basketball fandom, you know, more than it ever has, which is because listen, listen, at one point it wasn't seeping in at all, and so it getting the pub it's getting now is more than ever because it wasn't good before, but it is growing, and I do believe that the eyes on the sport, if you just look at the numbers, because of somebody like Caitlin Clark, the eyes on the sport are getting bigger.
Okay, and part of that is because men's college basketball blows.
Yeah, that could be part
Back to my original point, I cannot name a men's college basketball player. Not one. You put me up against the wall, you put a gun to my head, and you say, Josh, name a men's college basketball player right now. I could not do it. That is not for show. That is not for hyperbole. I legitimately could not. But, like, let's say you rewind to 2000, what year would that have been? Like, I guess 05-ish, whenever J.J. Redick was at Duke and Adam Morrison was at Gonzaga, okay, with his little mustache and everything. If J.J. Redick were playing basketball right now in the same era as Caitlin Clark, and J.J. Redick were playing at Duke when Duke still mattered, and J.J. Redick were hitting threes, like, dude, J.J. Redick was the most fun basketball player, really one of the most fun basketball players to ever watch. Homeboy would come up across the midcourt and pull up from the logo before anybody pulled up from the logo, sans Chris Jackson back in the 90s.
To your point, I don't think people understand that J.J. Redick was hitting over 40% of his threes on a 9.1 and 9.2 his last 2 years per game attempts number.
Correct.
That's ridiculous. No one would do that for 10 years.
And that's before the NBA became a place where all your best players, your centers shoot 6 threes a game now. Like, that's before then. And J.J. Redick was the most exciting player. He'd pull up, bang. Now he'd be at Cameron Indoor. Fans are all on top of him. They're playing North Carolina. He's coming up midcourt, just says, screw it, I'm pulling. If that were happening in men's college basketball right now, no one would know who Caitlin Clark is.
But
that's just reality.
Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't I mean, if you watch Caitlin Clark play, she's an enjoyable. She plays in a very enjoyable brand of basketball that is fun to watch. Why do we have to treat it like it's because it's not as exciting as what JJ Redick would have done. That happened 20 years ago. We got to enjoy that, so let's enjoy Caitlin Clark.
Fair point, but I will tell you this: the reason is because there are people trying to go out online, like a Tim Legler, trying to tell you that this is one of the 5 most exciting basketball players ever. The only reason why there's any attention being paid to Caitlin Clark is because men's college basketball blows. Okay, again, someone who doesn't play for SLU or in whatever conference they're in, the A10 or whatever it is. Name, and not the giant ogre man from Purdue. Name another college basketball player.
Caleb Love.
Who's that?
He's a CBC kid who played for UNC and now plays for Arizona.
Okay. I didn't know that.
You win. I mean, at the height of the UConn stuff, Maya Moore was a fascinating watch. And Nafisa Collier, who, again, an incarnate word player here from St. Louis, was a fascinating watch at UConn. And that was at a very good brand overall for college basketball. 2011, 2008. I mean, those are good times for college basketball. And those were fascinating women to watch. But they didn't get this kind of pub because the game itself hadn't grown the way it has over the last 7 or 8 years. And again, it might be minuscule. I'm not saying it's the 5th league or anything like that, but it's grown, and I don't think we should just shake there's no reason to shake a fist at that because it's good.
By the way, I'm not saying girls shouldn't play basketball or anything. I'm all for it. But like when people try to tell you that something is a big deal, you think to yourself, is this actually a big deal, right? Not really. Like, I don't believe that the vast majority of people care. And when Tim Legler says, this is one of the 5 most exciting basketball players I've ever seen, there are 20 more exciting NBA players playing basketball right now.
Tim's been around for a while.
Tim's a stiff.
That's probably not.
That's a stupid take. It's a stupid take.
I love Caitlin Clark, but I'm not. She's not in my top 5 all time.
It's a dumb, stupid take.
Top 10 maybe.
It's awful. And by the way, my girl Angel Reese, whip that ass, because that's how we do it on the Bayou. The Bayou Barbie comes in there and does a little bit of "you can't see me" and takes that championship home.
How's LSU doing this year?
I don't know. I don't pay attention.
They're not doing great.
I have no clue.
They're not doing great.
All I know is I watched them play in that championship game last year and they won. All right, we'll wrap it up after this.
101 mobile app.
We're back to the balloon party with Tim McKernan and Action Jackson on 101 ESPN.
I see some of the people texting, and one of the overwhelming sentiments is, why is everything about race? Well, I think people can talk about race without it being a thing. But, like, if you go back and look at Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese last year and the way the reactions went, both sides, whether you liked Angel Reese, whatever, a lot of it was all racially motivated because you'll read one thing that someone says and it becomes a racially. And very rarely do I hop on board with, like, oh, race. But in that one, it was obvious. You had black chick from LSU, white chick from Iowa, and the way a lot of people on social media reacted to Caitlin Clark getting trash talked to her like she does to everybody, the only reason that happened is because Angel Reese is black and cocky and makes a lot of cash in the NIL. What was that text? Like, this text that you were just reading me is really the ultimate example of that. Somebody sent a text message referring to Angel Reese as a menace.
Yes, the 314 sent in a text message they got from somebody else. So, wow, what a horrible take. Caitlin Clark is exciting, and this is from someone who never watched women's college basketball before. Angel Reese is a menace and couldn't even stick on her team at LSU because she is such a problem. Send this loser back to the bayou.
Okay, well, I lived in Louisiana for a long time, thus I guess I know a little bit more about LSU than you do because Angel Reese plays on the team still. She got suspended. I think it was like for an academic thing or something, but either way.
Yeah, she's played 21 games this year. Scoring's down just a little bit. She's at 19.5 points per game, 12.6 rebounds per game, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. That was down from last year when Angel Reese was at, this is incredible, I didn't realize she put up these numbers. She was at 23 points, 15 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks last year.
She's a menace.
So she's still just, on defense,
She's
I tell
a
you
menace.
what, she'll really mess up your offense.
What I've learned is there's a certain faction of the populace that only really likes trash talk when it's people who look like them are trash talking. Let me share a story with you. You brought up, when we were in the break, you brought up a gentleman by the name of Larry Bird. And Larry Bird, if you ask anybody from that era who the greatest trash talker of all time is, it's Larry Bird.
The greatest and the most disrespectful. The man took shots left-handed just to screw with guys.
Correct. I once was sitting in a hotel lobby with a man named Dominique Wilkins, the human highlight film. So I was...
He hated Larry so much.
So this is great, okay? So I was in a hotel lobby with him because a buddy of mine was interviewing him, and he goes, hey, Josh, do you want to meet Dominique Wilkins? Come over to the Four Seasons in Houston. He's calling the game tonight. If you want to meet him, come meet him. And I said, okay, cool. So I go to the lobby, and he's interviewing him, and he tells a story about a time that he was playing against Larry Bird. And Larry Bird would have the ball, like, out on the wing. And every time Larry Bird would have possession, he would look at Dominique Wilkins and says, come on, boy. Come get it, boy. You're going to cut. Hey, watch this, boy. And then he would just hit shots right in his face. Now, Dominique didn't seem to be overly upset about this. But it's just fascinating. Like, people talk like the only people on the planet whose trash talk is unacceptable is people who don't look like them. Like, Tom Lawless can flip a bat 1,000 feet into the air. But, like, if Juan Soto does it, look at that cocky Latin guy. That ain't the Cardinal way. I'll tell you right now, we don't flip bats here. No, only one of the most famous home runs in Cardinals history is a dude that looks like Tom Selleck flipping a bat into the air. By the way, I don't think that bat ever came down. That bat stayed in the air forever. It just floated. But, like, it is funny how there are a certain group of people who accept certain things based on how they look. If you look like them, you can do whatever you want. If you don't, then it's wrong, right? There are a lot of black folks who hate Nikola Jokic. You know why? Because he's really good. But he doesn't play a style of game like a Steph Curry who's hitting 45-foot threes. So, like, that's the issue. Like, I believe that we're too deep in an era where we're trying to build too many storylines about, like, equity and everything else. Like, oh, Caitlin Clark, one of the 5 best basketball players I've ever watched. Okay, Chief, put Caitlin Clark out there against whoever play. Who is the third? Put Najib Eccles on the court today. Not Najib Eccles when he was like the 12th man for Mizzou. Put Najib Eccles on the court against Caitlin Clark. He'd probably beat her. That's just science, right? But like everything that we hear it's like everything like, did you know that this Wisconsin team was the first all-white team to make it to the Final Four? That was a big day for us, so I remember. And then on the flip side, you'll get, did you know that this is the first playoff game that's been officiated by an all-African-American crew? Like, who the hell cares? Like, do you think black dudes are at the barbershop today? Like, guys, we got all black refs. It's a big day. This is a huge day for us. This is big. There's Rosa Parks, and then there's 4 black refs. Big day. All right, I hope you enjoyed the last Josh Ennis show. Well, really, it's Balloon Party, and I'm in for the guys, but I will never be on this radio station again. I feel pretty confident saying that, but I want you to know that I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm going to go get yelled at now and enjoy the guys coming up next. Big Blues win. I didn't even mention that. Dude, hell of a Blues win last night. They'll get into it next, and I'll see you when I see you, I guess. I don't know when that'll be, but it was nice knowing you. Goodbye.